Okay.
All right, this is an interview with Raymond H. Combs. New York State Military Museum, Saratoga Springs, New York. It is the 6th of October, 2003, approximately 2:40 p.m. Interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Raymond H. Combs, 3/23/26, and I was born in Argyle, New York.
Could you tell me what your educational background was?
I'd rather not, because it isn't very much.
Well,
I went to Orangeburg High School up to first year high. I quit, and I was off for a year. And then a school teacher took me under his arm and took me to Hyde Park, and I went to Hyde Park's high school, but I didn't graduate from there. I lacked like 6 months of graduating.
That was Roosevelt High School.
Roosevelt High School, yeah. And from there I went into service, and I was only 18 years old at the time.
Okay. Do you remember where you were and your reaction when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
I believe I was on the streets of Warrensburg when the extra newspaper come out, and the the newsboys were running up and down the street hollering extra, extra, you know, and that sort of thing. I believe I was on the streets of Warrensburg at the time.
Do you remember at all what you thought about this? Or?
I didn't think too much about it. I was too young. I was, I was only 16 then.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
Okay. Did you enlist or were you drafted?
I enlisted.
Why did you select the Navy?
I didn't want to go in the Army.
That's a good enough reason. So you were 18 years old when you...
When I went in, I was 18, yeah.
Okay. Where did you go for your boot camp?
Sampson, New York.
What was it like at Sampson?
I was only there for, I think, something like 8 weeks. And that was our indoctrining, or whatever you want to call it, into the service. And I think it was only 8 weeks long, as I recall. And
did you go anywhere else for specialized training?
No. Went from there, went to Norfolk, Virginia, and went right on to the USS Randolph.
Okay. Now, what was your assignment on the carrier?
Well, I had several assignments. For a while, I was extra 50 caliber machine gun gunner on a TBM, because when the flight crew came aboard our ship, they flew on, and the only people they could bring aboard with them was the initial crew. So they took some of us little guys and trained us on 50 caliber machine guns right aboard ship, and I flew 2 or 3 times as a machine gunner. That was one of my duties, but part-time.
Now, did you fly combat as a gunner?
Oh yes, I flew over Tokyo. I've seen the top of Mount Fujiyama. The other, I was an operator on number 3 elevator, and my duty there was I was on the hangar deck, which the elevator was like in 2 sections. It had, one section, the full elevator went up to the flight deck, and then as it came down, it had what we called an auxiliary elevator underneath the big elevator. When the big elevator came down, the little one went down with it. So there was room for the big one to get in there. But my only duty was I had a little booth, like a telephone booth, with a switch in there, and I had to make sure that there was nobody or nothing on that auxiliary elevator when the big elevator was coming down. That was my only duty. So during flight quarters, that elevator could not be used anyway, because it was the aft elevator almost in the center of the ship, which naturally couldn't be used during flight operations.
No, okay, so they didn't use it because they needed an entire deck.
Right,
so.
they had land. The planes
Now,
landed.
when it was used, why was it used?
It was used to transport airplanes. We had 3 elevators, one forward, one that hung out over the side of the ship, and number 3 elevator was almost in the middle, right in the landing area. So during flight operations, the only one they used was the one that was off the side of the ship. And one plane would go straight on the hangar deck, or on the flight deck, to get out of the way because planes were landing. And the next one would go on this elevator, they'd drop it down, put it on the hangar deck. So every other plane went downstairs, more or less.
Okay. Now, when did you leave Virginia? Well, about...
When did we leave? I got, see, that's what I can't remember, is exactly when, what the dates were when I've got it in there.
That's okay. I just thought maybe you...
It was within, I went from Sampson to Norfolk, Virginia, went right aboard the ship, and within 5 or 6 days, we left and we also had the crew of the USS Shangri-La, which was another aircraft carrier that was commissioned, I'd say, a month or so after we were. But we took their crew on the shakedown.
Now, were you the first crew on the Randolph?
We were the initial crew, yeah. I'm what they call a plane owner. And we went to someplace in the Caribbean for shakedown cruise. And then we came back and had a few repairs, and then we left for the Pacific.
Did you go through the Panama Canal?
Went through the Panama Canal both ways.
Now, were you in a convoy? Did you have a large number of ships with you? Or?
No, we were all alone. When, as I recall anyway, we had no other ships with us. While we were going from, we first had to go, now let me think. We had to, after the shakedown cruise, we went back to Newport News, Virginia, and had our gun sponsons, you know, the gun, we called them sponsons, or something like that. They hang out over the side of the ship. They won't go through the canal. So they had to be taken off. They would set them up on the flight deck. We went through the canal. We went to San Francisco, and they put them back on again.
Okay, where'd you go after San Francisco?
Right to Pearl Harbor, right to Ford Island in Pearl Harbor.
Okay. How long were you there?
A week, 10 days.
And from there?
From there we went to the Pacific. We went to Philippines. We went from San Francisco right to, well, actually we went to Ulithi, and then we was all around these.
Well, you could hold that up. If you hold it like this in front of you, Wayne can get that.
Okay. There is where the ship went during its existence.
So you went to Pearl Harbor, then you went to the Philippines.
Then we went to, I think we went to Ulithi first, which is a ring of islands. Have you ever heard of it?
Yes.
Okay, it's a ring of islands there was nothing but a harbor and there was, I wouldn't even dare say, but there was several, I'd say at least 5 to 8 aircraft carriers, and not all?
Yeah.
And probably 1,000 other ships. I know it was full of, but they figured that that particular place was far enough away from Japan so these suicide bombers couldn't get to us. But they figured wrong.
So you came under attack from kamikazes.
We...
Now, where were you when this happened?
Where was I?
The ship.
It was right in harbor, right in Ulithi.
Mm-hmm.
It was because and we were lit up like New York City because the people who did the thinking didn't think the Japanese could get out there. And one reason for that was because the Japanese were using Zeros, which were fighter planes, as kamikazes. And our people never stopped to think that, well, when they run out of Zeros, what are they going to use? So they started using twin-engine bombers. And that's what hit us, was a twin-engine bomber hit us right in the forecastle. Right.
Where were you when this happened?
I was in the water. Soon after it happened. We were having well, to make the story longer, we were big enough so we had an amphitheater on the hangar deck. And when we were in harbor, we would invite all the crew members from all these little ships that could not have a movie on their board ship because they, no place to put it. We would invite all those people onto our ship, and we would have movies. And one movie had just gotten over. They were having like an intermission. The crews that belonged on other ships were going down the gangways and gathering at the gangway to get onto their particular motor whale boats that would take them back to their ships. And that's when the kamikaze hit.
Was there any warning at all?
Oh, nothing. We were standing, I was standing in the middle of the hangar deck, well, along the side. I was probably as far from here to the wall from the edge of the hangar deck. And all our roller curtains were up, and all there is chains across to keep you from walking right out over the side of the ship. And I happened to be standing in a lucky place because I was standing talking to 2 of my friends, and they had their backs to the blast, and I had my face to it, which I understand that a man can take more in his face than he can in his back. Killed both those guys and blew me right out through that roller curtain. I never remember going through the air. The only thing I can remember is I was gasping and I was reaching for anything. I was in the water and I was reaching for anything I could get my hands on. And all these motor whale boats were alongside picking up their members of their ship. And somebody just grabbed me right by the collar and yanked me right into one of those motor whale boats. It's lucky I didn't hit one. And within 5 minutes, I would say, I had come to enough so that, I was all right. I wasn't hurt. They put me back on my gangway, and I went up and went to my fire station and started fighting fire.
Where did this plane hit on the ship?
Right in the fantail, right where our crew and a lot of members of these other ships always went out to the fantail to smoke, because of course we couldn't smoke on the, and that's where I was headed. But these 2 fellows stopped and we were talking when it hit, and you know, we didn't have no idea that anybody was anywhere near us.
Do you know if the plane was carrying bombs or it was just empty?
No, it had bombs in it.
Mm-hmm.
Must have, because it blew a big hole in our flight deck.
Mm-hmm.
I've got pictures of it here. But a lot of what I started to say was, a lot of the fellows that were from other ships went out to the fantail to have their cigarette before they left. A lot of our crew was out there. So there was, I think there was 100 and some odd men killed from our ship, and probably another 200 killed that were from other ships.
How long did it take to get the fires under control?
Oh, we had them under control probably within hours. I would say, well, I know it happened at like 10 o'clock at night because it was, the movie was on. Mm-hmm. And by the next day, we were, you know, we had no fire to mount anything. In fact, you know, there was a lot of fire and smoke, I know. Because I had to go into it. That was part of my fire job, was to go into it. And
did you have any kind of equipment, or?
yeah, in fact, I got a picture of it. I didn't even know it was in there. Just, I don't know, one day I was looking at it, and I remember this officer adjusting a gas mask. It wasn't a gas mask.
Mm-hmm.
It was a smoke thing. But I never knew there was a picture. And I happened to be looking at this one day, you know, several years ago. I said, good Lord, that's me. And that was probably the worst thing because, I mean, it was bodies blown all over. Our sprinkler systems came on, and so it was like a shower. And I remember there was a piece of canvas laying on the deck, and as I was going back in to see if I could find any guys to drag out, there was this guy laying on the deck with both legs gone and both arms gone, and he was still alive. But this rain and salt water was hitting him right square in the face, and I could see he was still, he wouldn't probably lived another 5 minutes, but he was alive at that time. And as I went by, I just grabbed that canvas and pulled it right over him. And of course, he was dead by the time they found him. Mm-hmm. At least I imagine. But, oh, we had bodies, I mean, we had bodies stuck to the ceiling. It was an experience I never want to go through again. I know that.
What happened to your carrier after you got the fires under control?
We had a repair ship come alongside, and they repaired the flight deck enough so that we could operate. And we went on and operated for, well, I don't know how much longer, but because I don't know, I'd have to look in there to find out the date that.
So you never had to go back to Pearl or anyone else?
No, we stayed right there, and they repaired the flight deck enough so that they could land planes. Of course, back there where it hit, there was nothing but deck. There was no barriers. There was no arresting gear back there because it was too far back. And what the theory is that this plane may not have been a suicide dive bomber, although it was coming in pretty close. They think it might have been a bomber because it was a twin-engine bomber that had gasoline fuel enough to get from Japan out to where we were. And but when we're at sea, we had two big antennas that probably 50 feet long, at least 50 feet long, but they were gear driven, and wires run between them. There was two of them, and when we were at sea, they were down here. Well, this is when the Japanese would take pictures of our ship. It was while we were at sea, not while we were at anchor. But for better reception, when we came into port, they would stand them up like this. And they think, the theory was at the time, that this bomber may have come in and go to drop bombs, but he didn't anticipate those barrier antennas, and he hit those, and brought him right into the deck. Got any water or anything in my mouth?
No.
When I talk so much, I
You want to continue the interview and I'll get some?
Sure.
shut that off for a minute or something,
Okay.
because I might sue it.
Okay.
All right, after the attack, and your carrier was repaired, where did you go?
We went to Okinawa from, now I'm not just sure where we might have gone in between that, but we ended up in Okinawa. And, our planes supported Iwo Jima. Our planes supported a lot of the fighting that was in Leyte and Leyte Gulf.
Did you ever come under attack from the Kamikazes again?
No, that was the only
That was
time.
the only time.
Oh, I say yes. We would hear the people who talked over the loudspeakers, you know, telling us on certain days, we have bogeys on the screen. But 9 times out of 10, we'd never even see them. There was only a few times that, you know, they got in close enough so that our gunners had to protect the ship. But we never got hit again. Or got hit before that. We might have got hit with bullets or something, but...
Now, were you near Okinawa when the great tornado or the typhoon hit?
And we were in it, yeah. We were at sea. I mean, I don't know. The sea looks all the same no matter where you are. But yes, I went through that to a typhoon. Ripped the catwalks right out from under our flight decks. We couldn't sit and eat a meal because the ship was, you know, like this. Trays wouldn't stay on the table. You had to hold the tray with one hand, eat with the other.
How long did you encounter this?
That typhoon, I think, went on for like 48 hours or so. It was quite a time.
Now, could you tell us about your two, you said you flew over Japan?
Yeah.
As a ball turret gunner, could you tell us about those?
Well, it was just 2 or 3 times, I think. I'm not sure. That I went up and, you know, they were bombing stuff, but I'm looking up in the air when they're looking down, you know. So I couldn't see very much. The only time I could see is if they went in for a bombing run, and when they would come up out of it, then I could look down and see land. Other than that, it was, I don't even remember hearing any bullets coming towards our plane or anything, and we never got hit. So.
Okay. Now, in the form that you filled out, it mentioned that you heard the atomic bomb.
Well, we think we did, but I'm not too sure whether we did or not. We were approximately between 25 and 50 miles off the coast of Japan when it was dropped. And of course, the next morning, or soon after it was dropped, it was announced. Oh yeah, we heard that. We didn't know what it was. You know, I'm not sure whether I heard it or not. I wouldn't lay my life on it.
Well, when the war ended, what did your ship do?
We immediately, I think it was the second day after it ended, because we needed more repair. They had a dust towards, just turned us towards the United States, and we came home.
Now, how was it announced on the ship that Japan had surrendered?
It was just not announced over the loudspeaker.
What was the reaction?
Oh God, I can't tell. It was great, great. Now we can go home, you know. And we did. It was like 48 hours, and we were on our way home.
What kind of feelings did you have when you heard about the atomic bombs being dropped?
I was so young that I don't even know what my feelings were in those days. We didn't know what it was. We knew it was an atomic bomb. Well, what's that? We had no statistics on what it was, neither did anybody else, I guess. So we knew it was a big bomb, that's all. And it stopped the war, and that was all.
Do you remember, did they announce it on the ship about the death of President Roosevelt?
Oh, yes.
Do you have a reaction to that?
No. I mean, it was a normal reaction as far as I can remember, but...
How long did you stay in the service after the war ended?
I came home and got right out of the services. I don't think we came back. Well, I did too stay in for a while because I'm not sure whether I was in the second group or the first group, but they came back to New York and they sent half of the ship home on leave for 30, I think it's either 30 or 60 days. And the ship went to Italy and picked up, we took over Italian prisoners that were here and that we'd captured, and we took them back to Italy, and we picked up U.S. Forces and brought them back to the United States.
Now, were you on the ship when it did that?
I think I was in the second wave. I'm not sure it was the first or second, but it went over twice.
Oh, okay.
With just half a crew, just enough to run the ship. And they put bunks, about 7 high, as I recall, on the hangar deck. It was just like pyramids, just room enough to walk between them. And we brought back, I don't know how many, but 7,000 sticks in my head for some reason or other. Troops from Italy, went to Naples, Italy. And I remember we pulled back in to New York Harbor on Christmas Day. That much I do remember.
When were you discharged?
Right. As soon as we got back, they started within a week. I was discharged and sent home.
Okay. Did you make use of the GI Bill?
I did, because jobs were hard to come by, and I went to work for a place in Glens Falls called AA Provisions. You probably heard of it.
Yes.
And I learned to be a butcher. So they had a slaughterhouse. I worked in the slaughterhouse. And they had a retail store. I worked in the retail store. They had a wholesale business where we sold boneless meat, you know, for hamburgers, for the big chains. And I was there for 5 years.
Did you ever what did you use the GI Bill for? For the training?
That was, half of it was being paid for by AA Provisions, and half was paid for by the government.
Okay. Did you ever use the 5220 Club? $20 a week for 52 weeks. It was kind of an unemployment.
I don't think so, no.
Okay. All right. Did you join any veterans organizations?
Oh, I belonged to Veterans of Foreign Wars for maybe a year.
Don't belong to anything now?
Don't belong to anything now.
I know we asked a little bit about this. Did you ever stay in contact with anyone that served with you?
No, I didn't. There was only one man that I wanted to keep in contact with, and he lived in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And by the time I got his address, because I never had it, I got it off a computer one day, and I wrote to his wife, and she answered me, and he had died 3 years prior to that, so that was the only one that...
And you said you'd never have gone back for a reunion, or?
I went once.
Once?
Jekyll Island, about 4 years ago. Went to the reunion, and there was about 5 other guys that were from the same division that I was there, and it was nice to meet them.
How do you think your time in the service changed or affected your life?
I don't think it did. I mean, it took, what, 2.5 years out of it, that's all. But, gave me maybe some, maybe I grew up a little bit because I was a young kid. I was too young and stupid to be afraid, or, in those days, you know, when you're that age, you think you're invincible, and, so I don't think it affected me. Mentally, anyway.
Yeah, maybe you could show us some of the pictures of the carrier when it was hit, after it was hit, or you could show them up to the camera when you find them.
All right, when I find them. History of it.
Did you ever get to see any USO shows at all?
Never went to one, no. We did have a leave, and a bunch of us went to Hollywood, California, and I did go. Stepped inside the door of the what they call it, Hollywood Canteen. It was run by the USO.
Oh, okay.
There's a picture of me right there.
Oh, well, why don't you hold that up to the camera?
No, I'd rather not. Can't see my face anyway.
Down there in the bottom corner?
Down there in the bottom corner.
So that's the equipment you wore to fight fires?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, got it. We got it.
Okay. I'd have to go through this whole book to find out. Well, there is these 2 pictures here. This picture is a picture of the flight deck. This is the hole that bomber made. And this is while it's under repair.
Okay. Got it.
Got it?
Okay. All right, well...
Here's another shot of some of the wreckage up here where the hole was.
Okay. Got it.
Okay.
I was hoping there'd be should be a decent picture. There's, maybe you can take just part of it. There's a picture of the USS Randolph underway.
That's it in the background?
Up here on the top.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
got it.
All right, well, thank you very much for your interview.
Okay.